give Kelly a round of applause. Thank you. Let's tell her thank you. Let's give her some love in the chat. And thank you so much for being here, Kelly. And with that, I'm going to switch speakers, and we're going to switch over to Pamela and welcome her to the stage. Welcome, Pamela. I am so happy to have you here as part of this month's WEN Talk. Welcome, everybody. Let's give her a warm WEN welcome. Happy to have you here. And I'm going to go ahead and give you the stage.
Haley, thank you so much for having me here today. Super honored to be here and part of this amazing network of incredible women just rocking life and just crushing it in business and teaming up together so we can take over the world. Now, today, what I really want to talk to you guys about is how to find the most profitable real estate deals, right? Everyone wants to get into real estate. Everyone wants to do all these incredible things, but it's like, how do you find that magic deal, right? So I'm going to walk you through 10 steps today on how to do that. I will give you a little bit of my background, why I think it's super important to diversify into real estate if you haven't already, and how to maximize from there using my 10 steps, which I call the foolproof financial formula. So I'm super excited to be here. Thank you all so much. So I'm going to take you through this. Now, I've got it right here. So, first things first, who am I and why am I talking to you, right? So, my name is Pamela Bardhi. I was born in Tirana, Albania, and I came to the US when I was about, I want to say 5 years old. My parents won the visa lottery to come here, and essentially, they didn't have any family here, didn't know how to speak English. My little brother was a newborn, and I was 5 years old. Now, the way that this happened was my grandmother put their names in the visa lottery, and my dad said, we're going for the American dream, period, that's it. So we came here when I was about 5. My parents were working all types of weird jobs when we first got to the US because, you know, the financial situation and not knowing how to speak English. So my father eventually got into the restaurant world. He was working back of house cooking in the beginning, and then he got into kind of front of house operations. So basically started to talk to customers, started to do deliveries, things like that. Because of that, he was able to meet the owner of the business personally and really became good friends with him. Now, this gentleman said something to my father in which he will never forget and really changed his life and his whole trajectory and my life and all generations to follow when he said this. 2 things. He said, Soko, the way that you build wealth in America is one of 2 ways. A, you own your own business. B, you own real estate. He's like, I know you've only been in this country for a couple of years and probably won't qualify for any real estate loans, but I'm going to give you a down payment. Go out and buy a business. My father went out, bought a business. I started working there when I was about, I want to say 10 years old because I wanted to hang out with my dad. And then by the time I was 18, I was running the show with him. By the time I was 21, I opened 2 of my own restaurants plus his on the back end because that's all I knew. And I found myself working like 14, 12, 16-hour days. And that was cool for being 21 and just graduating college and all of that. But I'm saying to myself, I'm like, dang, there's got to be a better way. Like, what do these investors do? Like, what is this thing all about real estate? Because to the extent that I knew real estate was really all about like people selling houses and that was it. Like I didn't know about making money work for you, real estate investing, like none of that. So I had real estate developers that came to my father's restaurant and they basically were like, hey, Pam, you know, we're real estate investors and like, this is what we do, you know, got into conversation with them. First, I literally thought that they were actual like drug dealers because I was like, how are these guys like do what they want whenever they want at any point in time? Like all of that. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, how can you just live like that? Here I am working like these insane hours. And they were talking about, you know, how the rentals that they've bought, that they've done flips, like they buy properties, fix them and sell them, or they buy them, fix them and renovate them and hold them for rentals. And I'm like, this is interesting. Learned a lot there. And from that moment, I decided that I wanted to get into real estate development. Now, real estate development, I was 21 years old, had 2 restaurants. So what I did was I hired a coach, bought my first flip, and really elevated from there. So I went on to create my own development company, my own real estate brokerage, my own construction company. I became one of the youngest licensed female general contractors in the state of Massachusetts throughout my time. And by the time I was 27, I made it to Forbes and Time magazine as a trailblazer in the real estate industry. And this was all through hustle and relationships. Remember, ladies, prior to this, I had no real estate experience. Honestly, like none. Just hustle and grit that got me there. And I always say, hustle outbeats talent every day of the week, right? You could be extremely talented in anything and everything. However, if you're not hustling, that singles you out, right? And that's how the hustlers win. So I've built this incredible career in the real estate development game, you know, being boots on the ground as a contractor myself, being in the construction game. And so throughout my time, I kept getting people to ask me like, hey, Pam, like, how do you actually do this? Like, what are the steps? Like, I don't even know what, like, how have you cultivated what you've cultivated and found such massive success in what you do? Now, I'm based here in the Boston, Massachusetts market. And I've kind of figured out ways in which it works for me. But I found that this not only works for Boston, but this works everywhere across the country. Anyone that I've shared this with, I do have a book that anyone I've shared this with literally has taken it and scaled it no matter what state they were in. And it's amazing. So let's start off with the first of the 10 steps, the foolproof financial formula, right? And this can be used for flipping houses. So if you want to buy, fix, flip, and sell, or you can purchase a property, renovate it, and hold it as a rental, or purchase a property, renovate it, and live in it yourself. So it really, or a commercial property. Like you can literally, there's a million different applications for this. The point is, you buy a property that needs some work, you add that value to it, and then either you hold it or you sell it. Now, in this market, a bit questionable. I would not flip anything right now. If you're purchasing something, honestly, hold it long term and have multiple exits, because if you're banking on just flipping it and selling it at the end, you might be in trouble because of the way that values are kind of playing themselves and interest rates and stuff these days. But first things first, where do you start, right? You're so enamored by real estate. And the problem with real estate, it's a problem and a curse, is that it's like drinking from a literal fire hose. Everybody wants to get into real estate. Everyone wants their hands in real estate. Now, the question is how to actually do it the right way, right? How do you do it strategically for the long term to risk mitigate everything that you had? So I'm gonna give you the insights as a developer today. So you guys have got like a whole toolbox. So if you're going out there, purchase anything, you've got this down. Now, first step of my formula is to identify your market. Now, this is a hard problem, right? So how do I explain this one? There's deals that look like amazing deals, right? So I'm in Massachusetts, and there's states that are cheaper, like Rhode Island and New Hampshire and stuff nearby. And it's very tempting to look at them and say, wow, I can only buy a house there for like $200K. And you always get what you pay for. And the rents are always going to be congruent to what the purchase price is. So even though things are more expensive here in Boston, you get more rent. So everything will always go according to price. So I always say this, you've got to know where are you playing? Where is your sandbox? Where do you want to start? Right? And I always say laser focus on 2 to 3 cities that you know like the back of your hand, especially if you've got a ton of relationships there and you've built your name there. That is super, super key. Absolutely take advantage of those relationships where you have there, because never forget, real estate is a local business. I played in my market here in Boston in like the Rosendale, West Roxbury area. And honestly, all of the deals that I've gotten, all off market, all handshake deals, insane deals, even at the top of the market. And that was because I had my relationships here. I was laser focused on 2 to 3 cities where I had the best relationships. And that's how I started. That is step number 1, right? And then another thing that this drives me crazy, right? So when you're looking at these markets and you're like, this looks like a really interesting place to invest. Oh, I'm used to this area. I know this area. Looking at the comps. Now, what do I mean by comps? Comparable sales, right? You're like, I want to purchase in this area because look how much this property sells for, and then that property sells for. I want to caution you very closely on this. Make sure whatever property you're looking at, whether you're looking to buy it and flip it, or you're looking to buy it and hold it for a long time, or live in it yourself, look at what has been sold within a half-mile radius within the last 6 months, even 3 months if you can, that look exactly like that house or property or whatever. That's going to be your most accurate pinpoint value, because I cannot tell you how imperative it is that you stay laser focused on that valuation. Because one street, like for example, there are streets in my city here in Boston, one street is worth 100K more than the next street over. But see, being local, I can understand that and I know that. But that's why also the comps are kind of the best way to really tap into that. So that is something to look into. If you're an agent or if you're working with an agent, make sure, hey, I want to know what's happening within a half-mile radius within the last 3 to 6 months. What's been sold here? Look at that price per square foot. And if you're looking at it as an investment property, look at the income structures and that kind of thing. So that's first things first. Find your sandbox, 2 to 3 cities. Once you find that sandbox, you're going to have an idea of what that sandbox is going to cost you, right? So sometimes I even like to argue and say, like, figure out your budget first and then kind of find your sandbox, but you can kind of do this simultaneously, right? So then looking at these comps that I just mentioned, you know, you want to ask yourself, well, how much am I looking to invest? You know, how much capital do I have? Do I have 401ks that I can put into place? Do I have insurance policies that I can liquidate to go out and purchase these real estate assets? Is there seller financing that I could get? Is there investors or people that want to come into this deal with me? I mean, your own liquidity. Do you have a property that has equity that you can pull a line of credit from? These are all options on how you can purchase real estate, guys. And even like with my lenders that I have here in Boston, if you have equity in your properties, sometimes they're able to collateralize them. So you don't even put any money down. They just write like, okay, hey, when you sell or refinance this property, you know, we'll just write it off on this property and you don't have to put any money down. Like, there's so many creative ways to buy real estate, regardless of what it is. Know how you're going to finance it and what your exit strategies are, right? And what I mean by that is, say you're going to buy a multifamily property, say a 3-family, keep it simple. And you're going to hold it and you're going to rent it. So maybe you buy it, do some work to it, and then you refinance it and you rent out the entire property and then keep it from there, right? So you're going to need like a multifamily investment loan on that. Make sure you have your bank lined up. Make sure all your financing is lined up prior to, right? You don't want to put in an offer on a deal and then all of a sudden not get approved for financing. It's like the biggest buzzkill on the entire planet. Do not recommend it, but that's why it's super key to know your budget so that also you know what you're in for, how much liquidity you're expected to utilize, like all of that stuff. When it comes to investing, everything is a numbers game, right? Like, don't fall in love with the house. I mean, unless you're living in it, but you get the idea of what I'm trying to say. Like, really, really focus on that. So that's super key. So identifying that budget is key. And then figuring out like what asset class, like what type of property do you actually want to purchase? And this can apply to whatever you want, right? You can buy a 2-family, you can buy a 3-family, buy a single family home if you want, right? Because even with these single family homes, there has been brand new laws across every single state that enables you to have these things called accessible dwelling units in your home, either in your basement, your attic, or you could actually build its own unit, like almost like a tiny home in your yard, which is super cool, right? And this was created because so many people are saying, my gosh, real estate's unaffordable. I can't go out and buy another house, but I need more space. So it's created for owner occupants. So even if you do have a single family home, still an option for you, you know, to do these ADUs, they're called accessible dwelling units. But you also could apply this to a commercial property, right? But you got to know what budget, where you're playing, and then choose the type of property that you're going for, right? The best real estate developers and investors that I know on the planet are like lasered in on what they focus on, right? Like, I have friends in Florida that buy multifamily buildings anywhere from 20 units to 50 units in the Tampa area. And that's what they've been doing the last 20 years. And it's worked wonders for them. Then I know people that are purchasing down south, like Georgia and Texas, and buying single family homes and crushing it with that. Whatever it is, just focus, laser focus on where you want to be, your location, your budget, and what you're buying, and focus on those same types of assets. And that's super, super key. Now, how do you really source the ideal deal, right? One of the main things that I was mentioning earlier was your neighborhood, right? So if you have relationships in these areas and your sandbox, if you will, you're going to know about things before most people do. right? If you go out there and, you call a buddy of yours who's lived, or a neighbor who's been on your street forever, you say, hey, I'm looking to buy, a 3-family. You know anybody who's selling? Oh, yeah, my cousin Jimmy's, looking to sell his 3-family. Bring him over there. Like, those are the best deals, guys. The absolute best deals you could ever, 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 ever have, right? And the cool thing about kind of keeping everything very centralized is for logistical and operational purposes. Now, say you want to invest in real estate and you want to go out and you want to buy something in Florida, you want to buy something in Texas, you want to buy something in Connecticut. That's great. But when maintenance happens and when you need contractors to go to certain places, you got things all over the place. Even in the same state, you could, if they're like more than an hour apart, it'd be very hard for you to find contractors and service people that are going to take care of those properties. Whereas from a logistical standpoint, you keep everything super close. Everything is much more efficient and energy efficient in that way, right? And plus, you also start to build your name in the community. People are like, oh, yeah, they, like, oh, yeah, I know Pam. She owns properties here. Like, and so on, your name builds, right? So that's exactly what you want in situations like this. Now, that being said, sourcing the ideal deal, if you will, word of mouth is definitely the best. Definitely the best. Of course, now you can start to fish some information on like MLS, right? Before, the market was so absolutely insane that like the deals on the market were just way overpriced. People were overpaying and that kind of thing. Now there's a little bit of leverage. So that is super, super helpful. So now you actually can look on MLS for some deals. Check on something that's been sitting on the market for a while and see where it takes you. But honestly, aside from relationships that I mentioned, 2 sources of people that are freaking amazing when it comes to real estate deals: real estate agents, the ones who sell the most in that area. Because regardless if they have something on the market or not, they always know of somebody who's looking to sell, right? They always know of somebody who's looking to sell, right? So they could have a pocket deal. You could do like an off-market deal, which is always the best, right? So there's that. And then there's local businesses like pizza places, hardware stores, CVS. I mean, you name it. Wherever people gather, it's a great way. The YMCA, like wherever people gather, the town sports, like, soccer games, things like that. That is where you want to be, and that is where you want to be connected, because that's where the people are. Remember, real estate is a local business, right? Social media marketing, letting people know that you're a buyer. Letting people know, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Oh, just grabbing a little water. Dry throat here in Boston. I'm deeply sorry about that. That is super, super important, right? Super, 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 super duper important. And I have so many other ways. Those are just the organic ways that I just mentioned. There's even more than that. There's automated lead generation tools. There's mailed letters. That's when you really want to get fancy schmancy. Door hangers, automated call services. That's for real estate investors that are looking to take things to the next level, right? And then next is how to analyze the best deal, right? How do you negotiate, right? So you picked your sandbox, you picked your budget, you picked your asset class. Now you're out there, you're finding these properties. Next, the most important thing for you to do is to analyze these properties, right? So I have all of these spreadsheets that I analyze the deal before I ever put pen to paper, right? And my biggest goal when I'm sitting down with anybody who has a potential property that I'm super, super, super interested in, my main goal is to get there in person with them so that I can walk the property and be able to kind of pinpoint a value on it and what value I can bring to it. And then after that, analyze the deal, then you close the deal after that part. So if you find a property that you're super interested in, the goal is you get a meeting with the seller or a seller's representative, like their real estate agent, walk through, take notes on all of the properties, right? Everything in the property. Take pictures, take videos, take all of that. And remember to go in there with heart and spirit. Never discuss numbers on the first deal. It's like, it's big, big no-no, right? Your goal is to build rapport. And from there, you go back to your home, your office, whatever, and you say, okay, here's the actual value of this property. We looked at the comparable sales. We looked at the areas that we could add value to this property. We ran our numbers. Now we're going to put it in an offer, right? So those are really the super, super important steps. After that, it's negotiation 101. You keep grooving, right? You put the pen to paper, you give the seller the offer, you back it up with all the evidence on why you gave them that price, and you go from there, right? Me, I've always closed like 9 out of 10 deals that I've ever done, right? Always been super straightforward with sellers of things that I can do, things that I can't do, prices that I can be at, prices that I can't be at. And I always back everything with data, right? So that it's never personal. Always want to back it up with data, right? And then after that offer signed, because I've done all my due diligence prior to, then it's just a rocket launch for funding, right? Then I take it to my lender, and my lender's like, okay, sweet, ready to go, Pam. You already ran your numbers. Let's rock and roll. And the next step really is to close it and start the work, right? Most of the time, the most valuable real estate deals that you're going to find, I mean, ideally, something that's a cosmetic flip that's very in and out is the goal, but 99% of the time I'm doing some work to it, right? So I have a whole section about teaching how to build your team and construction management, right? A lot of people forget that when it comes to real estate, you've got to have like your Rolodex without a doubt. Like, you need an attorney, an architect, contractors, suppliers, subcontractors, like what kind of agreements you're going to sign with these subcontractors and contractors and your GC. There's a million things when it comes to that, right? Some of you, like I said, you'll go into a cosmetic flip or you'll do the work yourselves. But there's a whole section that I have on construction management, which is super, super key because it's like a whole squad you're going to need in there. And that's why I say it's so important. If you can centralize all your operations and your investments in one location to start, like, hey, listen, when you're balling, by all means, please go out there and just completely start scaling out everywhere in the country. But when you start, you really want to centralize your operations for this exact reason, so you can keep your team, your contractors, and everybody kind of in one location and expand operations from there. Not just for when you do the renovations, but also for maintenance past that point, especially if it's an investment property. Now, if you live there, it's a little different because you're there, but it's more for investment properties. Now, construction management's a whole thing on its own, but the team is super important, right? Who you choose there is super important. And there's so many different resources out there now, like Thumbtack and things like this, where you can find incredible contractors that have been reviewed by peers who have actually used their services on the app and things like that. So there's a lot that you can do there for maintenance, for construction work. I mean, whatever it is that you need, that app has it. That's one very strong tool that I always love to recommend. And then, once you finish the construction work or renovation, whether it's long-term or something short-term, then how do you market your deal, right? I always say invest in your marketing, guys, regardless if you're going to sell it or if you're going to rent it. When you look at rental photos that look kind of crappy, you kind of just push the other way. Same thing when you go to buy a house, right? Or an investment property and stuff. Like, if the pictures are crap, you're kind of like, oh, this is, they didn't take the time to make some gorgeous photos happen and things like that. So super important. You can hold it for the long term or you can sell it, but invest in that marketing and then rinse and repeat.
So much to think about here. And, so much really valuable, meaty information. Y'all, we're going to chop these videos up so you can go back and watch this over and over again, because there is so much valuable content being delivered here today. Go back, hit replay on this. I want to say thank you to Pamela, because I'm just sitting here going, oh my gosh, so much information. Can we just talk about this for a few hours? Because seriously, I feel like a lot of times people are trying to invest in markets they don't know anything about. They're not doing their research. They're not doing the numbers, and, they get burned. And the more you know your numbers, the better you're going to do. And I feel like, it's not just overcoming fear and mindset. It's that having the, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to really, 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 do the numbers, understand the math, understand the accounting behind it so that you can do better. And that actually is an awesome segue to our next speaker. But how would somebody go about getting in touch with you?
Absolutely. Haley, thank you so much. So for all these fabulous ladies that are watching right now, this whole thing, I just want to give my free book out to them, which explains everything that I said today in full detail, so that if you are interested in anything, literally I'll send it to you on Instagram, LinkedIn, find me anywhere. Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Pamela Bardhi. Just look me up, send me a message, be like, hey, saw you on here. I'll literally send you my book. And I also have spreadsheets